Welcome back to the second session of contemporary English literature. We stopped last time on case study Toni Morrison's Beloved. Toni Morrison's Beloved stands as one of the most significant works of contemporary literature, a novel that transforms the unspeakable trauma of slavery into art without diminishing or diminishing or simplifying its horror. Publishing is 1987. A novel tells the story of this formerly enslaved woman living in Ohio after the Civil War, haunted by the ghost of the daughters she skilled rather than allowed to return to slavery through its innovative narrative structure and the use of magical realism. Beloved explores how historical trauma reverberates across generations and how the past continues to inhabit the present. This isn't just a historical novel about slavery, it's about how trauma lives on, how story haunts us, how we struggle to live with unbreakable or unbearable memories. Now let's move to the second slide. Talking about historical context, the novel engages with the aftermath of American slavery and the failure of Reconstruction to deliver genuine freedom and justice. Morrison grounds her story in historical reality. The character of this is inspired by Margaret Gardner, an enslaved woman who killed her child in similar circumstances in 18 on the web for call reality in 1856 by centering the narrative on enslaved people's perspectives rather than treating slavery as historical background. Merson reclaims and recenters Black experience in American history. Now let's move to magical realism. But before we start with this, we have to say that too often slavery appears in literally through white perspectives, through the eyes of sympathetic white characters. Morrison refuses his or this. Her novel centers black characters, their consciousness, their experience, their trauma, and their strength. So magical realism. Mercer employs magical realism, the ghost of beloved who becomes corporeal, not as fantasy but as necessary techniques for representing trauma that exceeds conventional representation. The ghost functions literally and symbolically. The actual daughter is killed as all enslaved children lost to violence and at the past that cannot be laid to rest. The technique allows Morrison to honor the supernatural beliefs of enslaved communities while creating a narrative structure that mirrors trauma's psychological effects. Trauma doesn't stay neatly in the past, it intrudes. It disturbs, it feels as real as a present. Beloved physical presence in the house uh, literalizes this psychological reality. The past isn't the past. It's here, it's now, it's embodied and demanding. Now let's go to fragmented narrative. The novel's non-linear structure with frequent flashbacks and gaps mirrors how traumatic memory works not as a coherent linear story but as intrusive fragments that disrupt the present immersion reveals information gradually, forcing readers to piece together what happened, experiencing something of the difficulty characters face in confronting their passing. This formal choices is not arbitrary, difficulty, but essential method for representing trauma's nature. Hmm. Morrison is making you, as a reader, work through the fragmentation, the gaps, the painful process of assembling a traumatic history. You cannot just passively consume this narrative. You have to actively reconstruct it, and that reconstruction mirrors the psychological with trauma survivors must do. Now let's go to memory and identity. The novel explores how slavery attempts to destroy Black selfhood and how memory becomes both a burden and the necessary tool for reconstruction. Characters struggle with what to remember and what to forget, how to acknowledge past trauma without being destroyed by it, and how to build identity and community in trauma's aftermath. Morrison shows memory as active living process rather than fixed past. Memory isn't something you have, it's something you do, something you work with, something that works on you. Beloved herself embodies this. She is memory, or she has memory made flesh the past that won't stay buried. Key symbols, the God's beloved, past trauma that demands acknowledgement, 124 house, isolation and haunting later community, scars, physical marking of violence and survival, the tree on this back be recreated from horror. This encapsulates Morrison's entire project, creating something beautiful from the horror of slavery without minimizing that horror. The tree grows from violence but transcends it. Each symbol operates on multiple levels, creating layers of meaning that reward close reading and repeating. Now let's go for notable quotes. Freeing yourself was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self was another. She is a friend of my mind. She gathered me, ma'am. The pieces I am, she gathered them and gave them back to me in all the right order. This is Boldy speaking about Sith. It's one of the most beautiful expressions of love in all of literature. What is love? It's someone who can gather the fragments of who you are, because Roma fragments us, scatters us, and return them to you in right order. Beloved synthesis, beloved demonstrates contemporary literature's capacity to engage with profound historical and moral questions through sophisticated literary technique. Morrison proves that formal innovation serves ethical and emotional purposes, that difficulty can be necessary rather than pretentious, and that literature can bear witness to historical trauma while maintaining hope for healing and the community. The novel remains essential reading for understanding both contemporary literature's possibilities and the ongoing legacy of slavery in American life. Slavery didn't end in 1865. Its legacy continues in mass incarceration, in racial violence, in economic inequality, in trauma passed through generations. Beloved helps us understand this continuing legacy. Now let's move to literary techniques in contemporary literature. Unreliable narrators. Contemporary literature frequently employs narrators who credibility is compromised, forcing readers to question what they are told and construct their own understanding. This technique appears in various forms: narrators who lie deliberately, those whose mental state affects perception, those with limited knowledge, or those whose biases shape their accounts. The unreliable narrator reflects both modern skepticism toward objective truth with creative, active reading experiences that require critical engagement. Instead of passively accepting what you are told, you have to evaluate, question, compare the narrator's account against other evidence in the text. Now let's go to multiple viewpoints. Many contemporary works present events from multiple characters' perspectives, creating complex, sometimes contradictory accounts that resist a singular interpretation. This technique emphasizes the subjectivity of experience and the inadequacy of any single perspective to capture truth. It can create empathy by forcing readers to inhabit different positions or highlight incredible differences in perception and values. Sometimes the multiple perspectives do not add up a unified truth. They reveal that people genuinely perceive reality differently, that conflicts aren't just misunderstandings, but fundamental differences in worldview. Now let's move to non-linear storytelling. Contemporary narratives frequently abandon chronological order, employing flashbacks, flash forwards, and fragmented temporality. This technique can serve multiple purposes: mirroring memories, associative logic, creating suspense through strategic revelation, emphasizing certain events' significance, or representing characters' psychological state. Temporal disruption becomes a tool for exploring how past, the present, and the future interconnect. Time isn't a simple line, it's complex, multi-dimensional, with different moments be lead into each other. Now let's go for intertextuality. Contemporary works extensively reference, quote, and allude to other texts, creating dense webs of literary connection. This can range from direct quotation to subtle echo, from reverent homage to critical contemporary intertextuality. Acknowledge that stories are always built from other stories, exploring how cultural narratives shape understanding while allowing readers to position their work within or against literary tradition. When Morrison writes Beloved, she is positioning it against the tradition of slavery narratives, against earlier literary treatments of slavery within African American literary tradition, within American literature broadly. For readers, catching intertextual references adds layers of meaning, but good intertextuality doesn't require you to catch every reference. The work still functions on its own terms. Metafiction, work that draw attention to their own fictional status, commenting on storytelling and the relationship between fiction and reality. This self-reflexivity can be playful or philosophical, questioning narrative's power and limitation. Examples include direct address to readers, characters where there is in a story, or narratives about the process of writing itself. Consider a novel that includes footnotes contradicting the main narrative, or a character who discusses how their story might be received by readers, or a narrator who admits uncertainty about how events actually happen. These meta-fictional moves make fiction's constructedness visible. Now let's move to irony, black, and humor. Contemporary literature employs irony and the dark comedy to address serious subjects while maintaining critical distance. Black humor treats disturbing subjects with levity, creating tension between content and the tune that can be unsettling or liberating. This technique allows writers to address trauma, violence, and absurdity without sentimentality while questioning appropriate response to horror. How do you respond to absurd evil? Sometimes laughter is the only response that makes sense, even if it's uncomfortable laughter. Bastchi, the imitation of mixing of styles, genres, or earlier work, sometimes variational and sometimes parodic. Contemporary literature freely combines high and low culture, literary and popular forms, creating hybrid texts that challenge hierarchies and explore how different moods of expression carry different meanings and research different audiences. For example, a novel might mix literary fiction with elements of detective fiction, science fiction, romance, incorporating different genre conventions, or it might switch between different prose styles, formal academic prose, street slang, bu- bureaucratic language, poetic imagery with the same work. Literary techniques synthesis. These techniques are not merely formalist tricks, but tools for grappling with specific philosophical, historical, and cultural questions. The unreliable narrator emerges from questions about truth and perspective is pluralistic world, nonlinear time reflects how consciousness actually works and how trauma disturbs chronology. Metafiction explores the ethical and effects of representation itself. Understanding these techniques means recognizing how form and content interconnect, how literary methods serves meaning making rather than existing separately from it. From form isn't a decoration added to content, from I is part of content, shapes what can be said and how. While novels often dominate discussions of contemporary literature, we shouldn't forget that poetry and drama remain vital, innovative forms. Let me briefly address these. Now, let's go to contemporary poetry and drama introduction. While novels often dominate discussions of contemporary literature, poetry and drama remain vital, innovative forms that continue to evolve in response to contemporary conditions. Contemporary poetry has witnessed the remarkable um, diversification with the traditional lyric forms coexisting alongside experimental approaches, performance poetry, and the digital forms. The boundaries between poetry and other art forms, music, visual art, performance have become increasingly porous, reflecting contemporary culture's multimedia nature. Poetry slams, spoken world performance, Instagram poetry. These forms challenge traditional notions of what poetry is and and where it happens. Now let's move to Seamus Heaney, Irish poet whose work explores rural life, Irish identity, history, and the troubles. His accessible yet sophisticated poems ground political and philosophical questions in concrete sensory experience, connecting personal memory to collective history. Haney can write about digging potatoes and simultaneously explore Irish history, family legacy, the poet's role in society. Now let's go to Carol and Duffy, first female poet. laureate of the UK, known for dramatic monologues that give voice to marginalized figures and explore themes of love, loss, identity, and memory. Her work combines formal craft with contemporary accessibility. She writes in her language about recognizable experiences, but with sophisticated techniques and deep insight, she demonstrates that contemporary poetry need not be obscure or deliberately difficult to the valuable or to be valuable. Now let's go to Claudia Rankine. American poet pushing genre boundaries with works like Citizen that combine poetry, essay, visual art, and cultural criticism to explore racism and microaggressions in contemporary America. Citizen is difficult to categorize. Is it poetry, prose, essay, all of the above? It includes second person address. You are in the dark, visual images, sports commentary, philosophical reflection, all woven together to explore the daily experience of racism in America. Now let's move to themes in contemporary poetry. Personal identity, exploration of race, gender, sexuality, and cultural belonging, political engagement, direct confrontation with social justice issues, war, and oppression, eco-poetics, environmental crisis, and the human relationship to nature, language itself, experimental work, exploring what language can and cannot do, history and memory, personal and collective remembering and forgetting. How do we remember? What do we forget? What are the ethics of memory? But to explore these questions through concrete specific language. Now let's move to modern drama. Contemporary theater continues to innovate, exploring new forms that challenge traditional dramatic conventions. Playwrights like Kyril Churchill, Tom Stoppard, and more recently D.P. Toker, Green, and Elias Birch create works that addresses pressing social issues through formally adventurous means. Contemporary drama often breaks the fourth wall, employs non-realistic staging, and addresses audiences directly, plays explore immigration, identity politics, class conflict, and environmental crisis while experimenting with structure, language, and performance conventions. Now let's go to say that contemporary poetry diversity reflects broader cultural democratization with previously marginalized voices, women, people of color, LGBTQs, poets, working class poets, claiming central space in literary tradition, performance poetry, and the spoken word have brought poetry to new audiences, emphasizing oral dimensions and immediate connections with listeners. Digital platforms enable new forms of poetic expressions and distribution, challenging traditional gatekeepers and creating global poetry communities. Instagram posts reach millions, poetry goes viral, new voices emerge without needing traditional publication. So the role of technology and media, digital culture's impact. The digital revolution has fundamentally transformed not only how literature is produced and distributed, but what stories are told and how they are structured. New narrative forms, electronic literature, and hypertext fiction enable nonlinear interactive storytelling where readers actively shape narrative through choices. Social media influence platforms like Twitter, X now, and Instagram have created new forms of micro literature while influencing traditional literature themes and structures. The way we communicate online affects how stories are told and what stories matter. Now let's go to talk about technology as a subject and form. Technology and the media have become central concerns for contemporary literature, both as subjects and as forces reshaping literary form itself. Writers grapple with how digital technology affects human consciousness, relationships, and society, exploring everything from social media's impact on identity and connection to artificial intelligence's implication for what it means to be human. Contemporary novels increasingly feature characters navigating digital landscapes, email, text messages, social media posts often appear directly in narratives, sometimes formatted to look like actual screenshots or interfaces. This isn't just adding contemporary detail, it reflects how much of our lives now happen digitally. Now let's move to talk about electronic literature. Electronic literature represents a genuinely new form enabled by digital technology. Works like Michael Joyce's Afternoon, a story of Shelley's Jackson's Patchwork Girl use hypertext to create narratives with multiple paths, where readers' choices determine what they experience. This interactivity makes readers co-creators, fundamentally altering the relationship between author's text and the reader. More recent forms include twine games, Instagram novels, and X fiction that exploit platform specific affordance. These forms are genuinely new. They couldn't exist before digital technology. Now let's go to talk about digital distribution and democratization. Digital distribution has democratized publishing, enabling writers to reach audiences without traditional gatekeepers. Self-publishing web serials and platforms like Wattpad have created new pathways to relay to readership. This democratization brings both opportunities. Diverse voices can find audiences, and the challenges quality control, this coverability, and the question of how writers support themselves financially. In this new landscape, the traditional model publisher pays advance, handles production and distribution, writer gets royalties, is disrupted, what replaces it. We are still figuring that out. Now let's go to key consideration. How does reading on screens versus print affect comprehension, attention, and the reading experience itself? Contemporary literature both explores and is shaped by these questions. Some writers experiment with forms suited to digital reading, shorter sections, more fragmentation. Others deliberately write demanding works that resist digital reading's temptation to skim. Now let's move to social media's influence. Social media has influenced literary content and the form in profound ways. The brevity demands by X, Twitter, has created new forms of compressed storytelling and poetic expression. And Instagram has enabled the visual textual hybrids where images and worlds interact. These platforms also shape literary themes. Contemporary novels frequently explore social media's effects on self-presentation, authenticity, privacy, and the human connection. Writers examine how online and offline selves relate, how digital performance affects memory and identity, and how technology mediates intimacy. Can you have genuine intimacy through screens? What lost and gained in digital communication? Now let's go to the attention and the distraction. The digital age also raises questions about attention and distraction that concern both writers and readers. Some contemporary literature responds by becoming more fragmented and fast-paced, while other works deliberately slow down, demanding sustained attention as resistance to digital culture's speed. Understanding technology's role helps students recognize how contemporary literature both reflects and critically engages with the conditions shaping our lives. Literature isn't separate from technological change. It's deeply enmeshed in it, both shaped by it and shaping how we understand it. Now let's move to contemporary literature and society, three functions. First, mirror of society. Literature reflects contemporary social realities, documenting how people actually live, think, and experience the world. Critical lens. Literature examines and critiques social structures, power relations, and ideology that shape society. Imaginative space. Literature envisions alternative possibilities, helping readers imagine different ways of recognizing social life. Science fiction imagines different futures. Utopian literature imagines better societies. All literature, by presenting different realities, expand our scene of possibility. Now let's move to literature social functions expanded. So, contemporary literature serves multiple crucial social functions beyond entertainment. It acts as a mirror reflecting society back to itself and documenting how people experience contemporary life across different contexts. Through literature, readers encounter experiences vastly different from their own different cultures, identities, social positions, and historical moments. This exposure builds understanding and empathy in ways that abstract knowledge cannot, making literature essential for developing the cultural literacy and ethical imagination necessary for navigating diverse pluralistic societies. Uh, in diverse democracies, we must understand people different from ourselves. Literature provides access to others' experience that's deeper than sociological data of news reports. Now let's go to say that equally important in literature is a critical function. Writers examine power structures, expose injustice, and question dominant narratives and assumptions. Contemporary literature has been crucial in bringing marginalized perspectives to wider attention, challenging readers to confront uncomfortable truths about racism, sexism, colonialism, and other forms of systematic oppression. Works like Shimanda, Ngozi Adichie's Americana, or Ocean Vagons on Earth. Are briefly uh, we are briefly gorgeous. Not only represent experiences often excluded from mainstream literature, but also critique the structure that create marginalization. Adichie's Americanas explores the experience of African immigrants in America, the complexities of race and identity, the micro and the macro levels of racism. Reading it gives you understanding that no textbook could provide. You feel what it's like to navigate American racial categories as a Nigerian immigrant. So let's move now to representation matters. Contemporary literature has witnessed a crucial expansions in those stories are told and who gets to tell them. Formerly marginalized voice, women, people of color, LGBTQs plus writers, disabled writers, working class writers have claimed central space, fundamentally transforming the literary landscape. This isn't just about inclusion or diversity as checkbox exercises. It's about challenging whose experiences are considered universal and whose are marked as particular. For too long, a white male middle class heterosexual experience was treated as universal, while everything else was diverse or niche. Now let's move to say that this representation isn't just about inclusion, but about challenging whose experiences are considered universal and whose are marked as particular. When Toni Morrison, Salman Rushdie, or Janet Winterson, right? They do not simply add diverse content to unchanged forms, but transform literature itself, bringing new perspectives, techniques, and concerns that enrich the entire field. Morrison brings African American oral traditions, African American cultural references, perspectives shaped by the Black American experience. Rogers brings post-colonial perspectives, techniques from Indian storytelling, concerns about migration and belonging. Winterson brings queer perspectives, a challenge to gender norms, experimental approaches to narrative. Now let's go to global perspectives. Contemporary English literature is increasingly global, with writers from post-colonial contexts reshaping the language and challenging British and American literary dominance. Authors like Chuna Achebe, Arundhati Roy, and No Violet Pilloway write in English while bringing non-Western perspectives, techniques, and cultural references that expand what English literature can be. This is profound. English spread globally through colonialism. It was imposed on colonized people, but both colonial writers have claimed English transformed its immediate express experiences and perspectives. The colonizers never imagined they have decolonized the language from within. Now let's go to say that this globalization reflects material realities of migration, diaspora, and interconnection. Contemporary literature explores transitional identities, hybrid cultures, and the ongoing legacies of colonialism, helping readers understand our increasingly interconnected yet unequal world. So, literature also fosters empathy and cultural understanding by enabling readers to inhabit other perspectives and experiences through narrative's unique capacity to provide access to characters' inner lives, their thoughts, feelings, motivations. Readers develop understanding that goes beyond abstract knowledge. This imaginative empathy is crucial for democratic society, enabling people to recognize others' humanity despite differences and to consider perspectives beyond their own immediate experience, engaging with ideas that challenge their assumptions. So we'll stop here and we'll continue inshallah the last session tomorrow. Until tomorrow, tata for now.